Hi, and it's Susan Alexander from the Funky for you to test your knowledge of anatomy. They're all true/false questions. I have two on the upper limb, two on the lower limb, three on the head and neck, and three on the abdomen, pelvis. So if you're ready, let's go. The first question on today's Funky Friday quiz is: the fundus of the gallbladder is located at the level of the transpyloric plane. Is that true or false? Is the fundus of the gallbladder located at the level of the transpyloric plane? Well, the answer to that question is true. It is. So here you can see the abdomen being divided into 9 different sections. There are 2 vertical lines and 2 horizontal lines. And the upper of the horizontal lines is the transpyloric plane. Now, you can get to this line by drawing a level which is halfway between the sternal notch at the top superiorly and the pubic symphysis inferiorly. Now, the abdomen, as I said, is divided into different sections. So at the top, you have the right hypochondrium, the epigastrium, and the left hypochondrium. The next level down is the right lumbar region, the umbilical region, and the left lumbar region. And at the bottom here, on the bottom row, you have the right iliac fossa, the hypogastrium, and the left iliac fossa. So there are some other very important structures which you can find at the level of the transpyloric plane. Obviously, there is the pylorus of the stomach. Then there is the neck of the pancreas, the duodenal jugular flexure, the fundus of the gallbladder, as previously discussed in this question, and it's at the level of the tip of the 9th costal cartilage. Next question. The cystic duct opens directly into the second part of the duodenum. Is that true or false? Does the cystic duct open directly onto the second part of the duodenum? Well, the answer to that question is it's false. It doesn't. So let's take a closer look at this. So I'm going to hide myself here. And here's a diagram showing you the gallbladder. Now, if you look at the gallbladder, you can see that there's a duct that emerges from the duct, and that, in fact, is the cystic duct. But if you look, you can see it joins this much larger duct, and that's been formed by the left and the right hepatic ducts to form the common hepatic duct. And the common hepatic duct and the cystic duct together join to form the common bile duct. And then, as it progresses down on its journey towards the duodenum, it's met and joined by the main pancreatic duct to form a chamber called the ampulla of Vater. And it is this that opens on to the second part of the duodenum. Next question. The superior rectal artery is a terminal branch of the inferior mesenteric artery. Is that true or false? The superior rectal artery is a terminal branch of the inferior mesenteric artery. Well, the answer to that question is true. It absolutely is. And here you can see the abdominal aorta in the center in front of the vertebral column. And the branch coming is the third anterior branch, the other two being the celiac trunk, the superior mesenteric artery. So this is the third one, the inferior mesenteric artery. Coming off there on the right-hand side, you can see the left colic artery, which goes on to supply the descending colon. And at the bottom there, you can see the superior rectal artery, which goes on to supply the rectum. Now, let's put these structures in place to give you a bit more of a visualization there. There we go. You can see them very clearly there. I'm saying hi to Robin's Vision. Thank you very much for joining us. Let's get on to the next question, shall we? The ossicles of the ear. So we're going to scoot on up now to the head and neck. The ossicles of the ear, they are found in the sphenoid bone. Is that true or false? Are they found in the sphenoid bone? The answer to this question is actually false, because let's take a look at the position of the sphenoid bone. You can see it here in pink, and it's highlighted on the skull there, and it's quite anterior to where the ear is, which is the next bone back, and I'm going to show you that right now. Here we go. And this is the temporal bone, which is now in blue. And in that red ring there is the external auditory meatus. And it is within that you can find the three bones of the ear, which are the stapes, the incus, and the malleus. Now, to remember that, I use the mnemonic SIM because they're tiny little bones and they're exactly tiny like a SIM card. And to remember which order they're in, it is the stapes, which is, it looks like a stirrup. And so I imagine that it's and that's up against the round window. And I imagine that you've got your foot in there kicking against the window saying, "Can you hear me?" So that's how I remember the order. Next question is the parotid gland. Is the parotid gland, or the parotid gland is innervated by fibers arising from the otic ganglion? True or false? The parotid gland is innervated by fibers arising from the otic ganglion. The answer to that question is true. It is. So let's take a look at that one in a bit more detail. So the glossal pharyngeal nerve sends preganglionic parasympathetic fibers to the otic ganglion. And in the otic ganglion, they synapse, and the fibers then travel via the auriculotemporal nerve to the parotid gland. And here's the parotid gland there, so you can see it's absolutely well placed to receive fibers from the auriculotemporal nerve. And stimulation of this nerve stimulates the secretion of saliva by the parotid gland itself. Next question. All the pharyngeal constrictor muscles are supplied by the same nerve, the vagus nerve. Is that true or false? Are all the pharyngeal constrictor muscles supplied by the vagus nerve? The answer to that question is true. They are, and here you can see them. I've removed the mandible from this diagram so you can see the constrictor muscles more clearly. There's a superior pharyngeal constrictor, a middle pharyngeal constrictor, and an inferior pharyngeal constrictor. So this question here, the superior gemellus is supplied by the nerve to the obturator externus. So you'll see now we've switched and we've gone right down to the pelvic region. The superior gemellus muscle is supplied by the nerve to obturator externus. Is that true or false? The answer to that question is no, it isn't. It's false. So I'm going to hide me here so you can see it. Now here's a picture of the posterior view of the pelvis, and there is that fine strip of a muscle there which has been highlighted, and that is the left and right superior gemelli, and they're actually supplied by the nerve to obturator internus. So that may seem a little strange, so let's dive into the anatomical location of these muscles and it will all make a bit more sense. So if there's a superior gemellus, you'd be right in thinking that there is in fact also an inferior gemellus. Gemelli mean twins, and there they are. They do look like a pair of twin muscles. And in between them, you'll notice there's another strip of muscle. So the left and right superior gemelli shared the same nerve supply as this muscle here, which is the obturator internus. And they're perfectly situated for sharing a similar nerve supply. But what about the inferior gemelli? Well, let's just look at that. Here's the inferior gemellus, and you'll see that just below that there's this broad quadrangular shaped muscle, which is called the quadratus femoris. So the right and left inferior gemelli share the same nerve supply as the right and left quadratus femoris, and that nerve is the nerve to quadratus femoris. So just to finally finish off, you may be thinking, well, what about obturator externus? Well, that's round here at the front, so it's nothing to do with the gemelli. Next question. The muscles that arise from this part of the hip bone flex the knee joint. Is that true or false? Do the muscles that arise from this part of the hip bone flex the knee joint? Akil, hello. Thank you for saying hi. Thank you for joining us. Let me see if you can answer this question. The answer is true. They do. And it's the hamstring muscles that arise from the ischial tuberosities, which was that part of highlighted bone. And so the hamstring muscles, there are 3 of them, semimembranosus, semitendinosus, and biceps femoris. Next question. We're nearly at the end. Thank you, Akil. That's lovely. And love back to you from England too. The nerve that supplies this muscle, the tendon of which I've highlighted in green, arises from the posterior cord of the brachial plexus. Is that true or false? Does the nerve that supply the muscle highlighted in green arise from the posterior cord of the brachial plexus? Now, I had a couple of people saying that some of the questions were too easy, so I thought I'd just up it a level. And so in order to answer this question, you firstly need to be able to identify which muscle it is. Then you need to know which nerve it is. And then you need to know whether it comes from the lateral, medial, or posterior cord of the brachial plexus. So let's take a look at that. That muscle was actually extensor carpi radialis longus because it was inserting onto the second metacarpal. Now, the extensor carpi radialis longus is one of the extensor muscles of the forearm, and it arises from the distal humerus at the so-called wad of 3. So let's take a look at that. There's the extensor carpi radialis on its own on the left-hand image, and now on the right-hand image, I've added extensor carpi radialis brevis, and you'll see that that inserts onto the base of the third metacarpal. And they're both supplied by a derivation of the radial nerve, and the radial nerve is absolutely derived from the posterior cord of the brachial plexus. So the answer to that question was true. Now, my final question for today is: the cephalic vein drains directly into the brachial vein of the arm. So does the cephalic vein drain directly into the brachial vein? Is that true or false? The answer to that question is, let me flick it on. It is false. Now here you can see the cephalic vein placed laterally, and these are superficial veins. And the basilic vein is also a superficial vein. The basilic vein runs up medially and turns into the axillary vein, which eventually turns into the subclavian vein. The cephalic vein, on the other hand, runs laterally, and it joins higher up directly into the subclavian vein. So it has nothing to do with the basilic vein. So let me flick that on. So let's just have a look. So the cephalic vein for me is a really important vein, because as a shoulder surgeon, when I'm doing an operation on the shoulder, you make a cut on the anterior aspect of the shoulder, and you go between this internervous plane between the deltoid muscle and the pectoralis major muscle. And the one thing that you must look out for and must avoid is the cephalic vein, because if you nick it or cut it, it bleeds a lot. So you need to look for it, protect it, move it to the side, and then you can go further down and access the shoulder joint, or the anterior aspect of the shoulder joint. And so you can see that there's a lot of muscles and soft tissues that completely separate the cephalic vein from the basilic vein. And I just wanted to show you the brachial vein to finish this off. And here it is. So the brachial vein is one of the deep veins, and that joins in and drains into the axillary vein directly. So the basilic vein and the brachial vein both drain into the axillary vein. So that's the end of, I'm going to go back here. So that's the end of the quiz this week. I hope you enjoyed it. I am going to be taking a break from doing the quizzes in April, because we're going to be focusing on producing a lot more content, which is being released every week on our website. There's going to be a lot more Let's Refresh videos for the abdomen. The funky worksheets are currently being done. They're almost finished, and they're being loaded up as we go along. So please go over. It's a fantastic resource. Go over there, take a look at it, download the worksheets, take our tests, and it will really, really help to boost your learning. So stay safe, keep in touch with us, let us know if there's anything you'd like us to cover, or anything that you'd like us to produce for you to learn anatomy. Until next time, Stay funky.